Hello and welcome to the Road to Autonomy. The Road to Autonomy is brought to you in part by Stantec Generation AV. Stantec Generation AV combines some of the most experienced AV experts in the industry with the resources of a global engineering firm. Stantec Generation AV provides education, consulting, assessment, and guidance to any industry interested in autonomous vehicles. Learn more at stantec.com. Hello and welcome to the Road to Autonomy. I'm your host, Grayson Brulte. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to have Dustin Koehl, Senior Vice President of Sales, US Xpress. Dustin, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Grayson. Happy to be here.
I'm super excited to have you here to pull back the curtain on what US Xpress is, what US Xpress is trying to achieve, and what the future of US Xpress looks like, because you're a common denominator in the autonomous trucking industry. It comes up, US Xpress. Talk to this individual, US Xpress. From an industry marketing perspective, you're doing something right.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And it's a fun topic, certainly a hot topic this day and age with COVID and supply chain issues, and certainly as we come up against Christmas and people want those gifts.
And that's what autonomous trucking will do. It will allow gifts to be under the Christmas tree so parents don't have to explain what a supply chain is and why Santa couldn't make something magically with the elves in his workshop. So let's go autonomous trucking industry. Let's have a wonderful, healthy, successful Christmas for everyone. Dustin, for a listener who might not be familiar with US Xpress, how would you describe the company?
Great question. And at US Xpress, we're one of the largest truckload carriers in the country. We've been around for 30 plus years, and present day, we're really on a transformation journey. For us, we operate with 3 strategic business units, with Variant representing our over-the-road fleet, Xpress Technologies representing our brokerage division, and then really our dedicated division being that third leg of the stool. And you really got to go back to really 2017, 2018, and under the leadership of Eric Fuller, our CEO, he really casted a vision for disruption in our industry. And if you think about all of the interest over the last 4 or 5 years coming into the truckload space, all of a sudden you see venture capitalists and private equity in the street taking a lot of interest of our total addressable market, where there is $800 billion market share or $400 billion specifically for truckload. So a lot of people want to take a chunk of that because there is no clear market leader. And so with the vision of Eric and the executive team, we saw an opportunity to really reimagine what we do at US Xpress. And that's really where Variant came in, is really the ethos or thesis to reimagining the over-the-road trucking experience. And then certainly what we've done with Xpress Technologies of really how we care and wrap our arms around third-party carriers to really give a dynamic experience too.
In 2017, your CEO, visionary, sees the future of autonomy, says we're going to reimagine our business, we're going to retransform our business. What was that like internally when the doctrine was made to go all in on innovation and all in on embracing the future?
I think it goes back to many of the public statements Eric has made. If that you look at the industry as a whole over the last 20 years, and you've really seen the same truckload carriers at the same size, regardless of acquisition or merger or partnership, very quickly you see those not really work out and actually see a degradation in fleet size. We really didn't see any scalable models. And so Eric and team, we have worked very hard over the past couple of years to really figure out what that could be for our shippers and drivers, and then ultimately other stakeholders in the industry too. It really kind of takes us to the Variant model that we spoke about.
Researching for this podcast, I looked up Variant. The drivers looked happy. And I want to point out that I believe the statistic was 94% of your drivers on the Variant platform go home and sleep in their own bed. How are you able to achieve that with Variant? Are you limiting the routes that they run, or how are you able to achieve that, let's say, call it a work-life balance of the new product that you're introducing?
Variant, if you look at the definition of something different, that's really what we're looking to achieve. And a lot of that goes back to the decision that US Xpress made to recruit really top technology talent, specifically outside of our industry, that really came in. And we have to share that Variant was really incubated and designed down in Midtown Atlanta, really what we would consider an extension of Georgia Tech's campus. And it really gave us the ability to recruit the technology talent. And present day, we have well over 15 PhD data scientists that really are doing the meaningful work around network optimization. And so that really affects not just our drivers, but then also our shippers hand in hand in that. Significant CapEx in how we're optimizing freight. And in turn, what you shared is really giving a more deliberate experience for our drivers. And the home time that you mentioned, that is something that we have to honor. And that doesn't mean that they're home daily, but that means that we're really able to honor those home time requests and really giving the optionality of freight in their hands to give them the options, not necessarily a dispatcher, because we look at the dispatcher, the traditional fleet manager model is actually antiquated, and we really blew that up. And so we actually do not have fleet managers per se. We have operational specialists that work cross-functionally across the organization and really give much of that choice or optionality to the driver to make that choice on their deliveries.
U.S. Xpress is doing good by drivers.
Yeah. And I think in an industry where drivers often have been treated like cattle or commoditized, that we have to change that there are human beings behind the wheels and humans that have families at home and churches to attend and ball games to go to. And that's important. And I think when drivers are over the road, that we have to take a very concentrated approach to that and make sure that we're honoring our commitments to the drivers and not just our customers too.
The drivers, I want to point, they're talented individuals. There's million-mile drivers with no incidents, no crashes. They're really talented individuals that are the backbone of the U.S. economy, because if you bought it, a truck brought it.
Exactly. I mean, everything in your room behind you and mine and in our offices and communities, it came on a truck at some point. And I think that has really been brought to light during the COVID environment, when all of a sudden you saw truck drivers were really like superheroes. I mean, when we think about toilet paper and the urgency behind that and the food and goods that we need so badly, ultimately it took trucks to deliver that.
And they showed up on time, they delivered the goods on time, and they did not complain.
Exactly.
And that takes a special individual to do that. Zooming out here for a moment, what role is U.S. Xpress playing to continue that goods can go from the East Coast to the West Coast on the United States on a regular basis?
Such a great question. And again, as you make that reference of truck drivers, professional truck drivers are the backbone of this industry. And oftentimes don't look for the praise or recognition, but it has been nice to see some of our professional drivers recognized the past couple of years. And for U.S. Xpress, our role in that is, again, to really press in to the needs of our customers in the supply chain. We have really become extremely creative in the dialogue with our shippers, that it's not as transactional as it once used to be. It's not just a rate in a spreadsheet. We have to have meaningful dialogue about those experiences at the shipper, at the travel centers, when they're braking. I mean, so it really is this journey and experience, or what some people would label the overall supply chain. The driver's right in the middle of it. Our trucks are right in the middle of it. And so for us, we try to lead in that. I mean, Eric Fuller and other representatives at U.S. Xpress, you will see in the media, you will see advocating for our companies in the industry, for our drivers' rights as well. And ultimately, we care deeply about our drivers and our customers.
With a pending driver shortage that's reported, and all it seems to do is just get larger and larger, depending on the American Trucking Association puts out a number, the media puts out another number, and the supply chain crunch, the instability of the supply chain. When do you think these issues are going to be resolved, and what role is U.S. Xpress looking to play to help resolve these issues?
Bob Costello with the ATA will quote, there's 80,000 drivers short in this industry. And that's up from 60,000, I guess, in his recent reports dating back 2 and 3 years ago. Again, I think this is one of those pivotal points where technology is certainly coming to our industry. And we know trucking is a high touch people industry, but now this technology is really offering us great insight of really how to care for our drivers, really understand the networks and the volatility, or ultimately the inconsistencies of freight networks. And so we're really able to aggregate data in a really meaningful way to offer more consistency, and I'd also say sustainability, because I think that is what shippers and then ultimately consumers are hoping to see, is sustainability and consistency in their own lives.
Sustainability, I'm going to go on the record here. We're going into 2022, will be the hottest, most talked about topic for the next 4 to 5 years across every industry in the United States and globally, a matter of fact. I think for a long time, Europe has led the sustainability charge, but that charge is coming to America. And I love the saying, the cat's out of the bag and it's not going back in. That's sustainability. What is U.S. Xpress doing as it relates to sustainability? Are you trying to cut CO2 emissions? What is the company's commitment to sustainability?
From a sustainability standpoint, I think we have to kind of take a step back, and there's this overarching term of corporate responsibility. And again, the blessing and a curse of what came out of the COVID environment was for organizations and people to take a step back and to look at what really matters. And I think U.S. Xpress, we took a deep dive into what corporate responsibility means. And first and foremost, I think that gave us a great sense of urgency to, one, figure out, like, how do we care for our community? I mean, so all of a sudden people are hurting. People are very fearful of the unknowns of this environment we're in. And so we really took a concentrated approach of how to care for all of our employees, whether it's be our professional drivers or our office staff in the community, and certainly making sure that our communities were healthy and safe. And the second part of that probably goes back to what you're alluding to of sustainability. And ESG, one of the more popular acronyms in the world right now. And that is bearing light with our shippers. And really, we are starting to see more questions in RFPs or RFQs of our sustainability plans. And we are exploring options of just what that looks like for us, because when we have our trucks travel over 600 million miles a year, and over 1.2 million deliveries are made per year. That's a great opportunity to be good stewards of our environment. That's where we take a great interest in research with those evolving technologies, whether that is hydrogen or autonomous vehicles or even the electrification. We do try to be an industry leader and thought leader at that too.
I'll just sum it up this way. U.S. Xpress is doing right. You're leaning in to solve a problem. And I have to give you and Mr. Fuller a lot of credit for that, because there's a clear theme here that U.S. Xpress leans into the future. U.S. Xpress leans into innovation and wholeheartedly embrace that. So I have to give your CEO and your board a lot of credit for tackling that. I absolutely love the line, how do we care for our community? That is a very brilliant tactical line. Did that strengthen the internal culture of U.S. Xpress when the company came out and said, we care, we hear you, we're here for you?
Very much so. I mean, especially jumping into this virtual environment, we had to be creative in ways of how we really engaged our workforce. But then also in a responsible way, we really wanted to understand what is important to our workforce in the community. And that's going to vary community to community across the country. And so I've been really impressed and encouraged by our leadership team and our partners in HR and org development, how they really allow us great opportunities to partner with organizations like here in Chattanooga, the Community Kitchen, that really presses into the homeless community and cares for them in a deep way. Or even like Chat Prep, that is a great inner city school that is devoted to really developing young men. And so we're about to take part in a Young Mentors program that is a 7-year commitment to walk alongside these boys starting in middle school all through high school. And of these 300 kids, 80% of these young men are actually in single family homes. And so what a unique opportunity that we've got to really pour into the lives of these young men.
It's beautiful. U.S. Xpress cares. It's beautiful because as you mentor these young men and you get involved, you're going to have a positive impact on their lives. And they can go into a career in the trucking industry because something they were exposed to, or perhaps might have recommended a book and they read something in a book and they go on to build a new technology that transforms the world. It's because you took the time to care, to do the right thing, to do the outreach, to spend the quality time.
Exactly.
And that's something that more companies should do, and something that I'm a big fan of and something I completely applaud you for doing. You mentioned U.S. Xpress trucks travel 600 million miles a year. When you're traveling 600 million miles a year, it's a lot of miles. But a lot of miles gives you a lot of insight into the world, a lot of insight into the trucking industry. So, Dustin, in your opinion, what is the current state of the trucking industry?
As I referenced, it's really at this inflection point where we do have this flood of technology coming in, but how do you really combine that technology with the people in a meaningful way? And it does take a great deal of collaboration and partnership across the supply chain. And I would also reference that we did a great study with MIT this past year in 2020. And specifically, it was around dwell. And so when you talk about these 600 plus million miles that we travel, the fact of the matter is with the driver, they have a 14-hour day or an 11-hour clock that they drive. Well, industry average is about 6.5 hours is really all they drive each day. And so there's a great deal of congestion. There's a great deal of challenges for drivers to even find parking. In some instances and states, you get into larger cities, it could take a professional driver 30 minutes to an hour to find parking before they have to break due to their hours of service. And oftentimes we miss these things, and often we just forget of those challenges that congestion and our roads provide. So really great opportunities for us to have those conversations with shippers and government stakeholders and state entities as well to just really educate and advocate for the truck driver.
How did parking become such a big issue? I would have never thought of that. Do you have a truck stop? The truck parks. And it's like, oh, never thought of that. So how did that become such a problem? Is it just such a demand for the growth of online e-commerce, the demand of goods? What drove that parking problem?
You think of really the bottlenecks, and Rebecca Brewster and team at ATRI, the American Transportation Research Institute there, they do some phenomenal work of really evaluating our interstate systems and the flow of goods. And I think if you look at those bottlenecks across the country, and we actually have one of the most popular bottlenecks here in Chattanooga with 75 and 24, it's in the top 10 there. But also you're going to find some of the largest challenges for driver parking. While it's great that we have these investments in infrastructure at time, and there should be, and we need that to have smart roads and to build out the capacity needed for our supply chain, it often does come at a cost. And sometimes our drivers, they'll have to make that sacrifice in their hours and utilization, and us as a company in turn.
How do we fix the parking problem today? Do we build more parking infrastructure for the trucks on the side of the highways? What can be done? Because it's a bigger issue. It talks about, car park. Let's build more spots for a car to park in a city. Okay, and they vote and they build it. They fund it through a bond or however they're going to fund it. Never hear any conversations around let's build more parking and let's call it depot infrastructure for trucking. Why is that?
Great question. And when you think about the parking challenges and really the growth in demand, as you said, in e-commerce and then other sectors as well, there are just many great truck driving professionals on the road, more than there ever has been. Whether you're talking final mile or middle mile, that's the case. And I think there is an opportunity to really press in to those real estate needs as you talk about on-ramp parking and what that looks like. But more importantly, when you get off those exits, the parcels available. And I think we know in this environment, or at least what I see in the industry, is real estate's at a premium. And can those investors or stakeholders really generate that return based on parking availability? At least through that lens, I think it's going to be very challenging unless you and I advocate to start turning around some of these more traditional mall parking lots into truck parking. We may be banging our head against the wall. But there's also, I think, that opportunity to advocate for the industry, whether it's at the city or state level, or certainly at the federal level with the recent infrastructure bill that we know of. Are there opportunities there to build and invest in more parking at these travel centers and rest stops, certainly too?
There is tremendous opportunity if certain analysts and individuals would stop demonizing parking. That's a big issue there. And as it relates to making money, I'm an investor, but my investor hat on here for a minute. I'll develop the infrastructure for US Xpress, looking to and say, okay, Dustin, okay, I'll build you this infrastructure, but when autonomous comes, I want to be able to convert this to autonomous trucking, and I'll make it a middle mile depot. I'll make it some sort of, let's call it e-commerce warehouse fulfillment center. I'll make my money from that. So you look at that. Is it that investors, do you think, don't really understand the true grasp of autonomous truck and the impact that it's going to have on the society? Because no matter what happens, infrastructure and real estate will play a huge role in the future of autonomy, both on the passenger side and the trucking side. How do we get the investor world to say, wait a second, there's an opportunity to get in and generate decent minimal returns today, but at least be cash flow positive. Then when autonomous trucking comes, whoa. Now we've got growth real estate.
And what comes to mind when I hear those comments is just the future of trucking. You really think of the future of trucking where you're going to have a truck, whether that be autonomous or driver in the cab. And then you're going to have really this trailing asset, or the trailer as we know it. And in the middle of that, this SaaS or TaaS model. Well, all of these things, they're still going to need a terminal network. You're going to need a hub-to-hub model or a depot-to-depot model. And the future of these autonomous truck networks, they may be 50 to 100 acre terminals. And it's yet to be decided of what these new age terminals will look like, but there will be a great deal of service and intentionality. New technologies we know will come, a new workforce and labor will come with that to really enable the supply chain. And really, when you think about the maintenance and the technicians and the jobs that are created around autonomous vehicles, there's a lot of great potential there.
And the most beautiful part about building the depots from the ground up today, they can be built carbon zero. They can be built fully sustainable because we have the technology, the engineering chops to do it, which will help reduce emissions, and it will allow the trucking industry to continue as a whole of reducing carbon and going for sustainability. So it's not just the trucks, it's the infrastructure, the industry comes together. So we're putting all the pieces together. I love the depot-to-depot model. That's coming. Overall, so US Xpress is looking at depots. You're looking at how to be nice to drivers and do right by drivers. How is the company preparing for the future of autonomous trucking? Are you actively laying that groundwork today? So as I said earlier, you can kind of turn the button on and US Xpress has the infrastructure ready to go?
Yes, and we have been for, nearly 4 to 5 years. And US Xpress historically with Max Fuller, our founder and chairman, and then certainly with Eric over the last 10 years, we have been known as an innovator. Really, when you think of equipment from the tractor and the trailer and the various platforms and interfaces need to really evolve in this industry. And so it's really no surprise to me that US Xpress really became one of the first fleets, if not the first fleet, to say, let's be at the tip of the spear here. And so we have really pressed in from a regulatory space. We have pressed in really from an operational playbook. And then where I spend a lot of time is also in the commercial strategy as we engage our shippers. And so it's a really unique and evolving ecosystem, and it's going to take over the next 5 to 10 years to really evolve and develop. For myself, I have the opportunity to vice chair the Autonomous Truck Committee at the American Trucking Associations and really have a unique view where the membership on that committee is nearly 100 people. And it's a range of AV developers and suppliers, OEMs, and then a handful of fleets. And I think that's what probably concerns us still the most is that many of our peers, quite frankly, put their head in the sand. They don't want to deal with it because they're afraid of driver perception or driver reaction. And we, and specifically Eric Fuller, has taken the stance that we want to be very transparent and include the driver in those discussions. We want drivers to be a part of that discussion and think that they play a really important role in autonomous trucks for the future. We've been really intentional with messaging to our driver workforce and our office staff and very transparent about whether it's investments or partnerships or running or piloting freight. And now even to the extent of really designing software and technology that really builds into autonomous technologies.
Transparency builds trust. I'll say it again. Transparency builds trust. You're building trust with your customers. You're building trust with the public. You're building trust with regulators. And you're also, more importantly, building trust with your shareholders and your employees. But we cannot be afraid of the future. Imagine if Walt Disney himself was afraid of the future. We wouldn't have Disney World. We wouldn't have animatronics. We wouldn't have every 6 and 7 year old's favorite destination to go to. Disney World and Disneyland here in the United States. Imagine if George Lucas was afraid of the future, we wouldn't have Star Wars. We have to lean into the future or we'll never evolve as a society. So please lean into the future. When you sit down with your customers and you've got great insights as the vice chair of the Autonomous Task Force for ATA, and your customers say, Dustin, what is autonomous trucking? What kind of questions are they asking you? Are they leaning into the future? Are they embracing this? What are some of those dialogues of conversations like?
Some of it's a really fun conversation. And I have to reference coming out of the COVID environment. And one of the jokes that we heard often or statements was autonomous trucks don't get COVID. And while that is true, there's a lot more to examine behind that. One of the many questions that we've asked ourselves and really done a great deal of research, and certainly our shippers, it's now at the tip of their tongue, is really the central point of safety. And really, I think that we do need safety at the core of all of our efforts in this industry, because when you think of a company our size running hundreds of millions of miles a year, we've got a responsibility there that safety has to be top of mind. The second part of that is that sustainability term that we've already discussed. And we do, again, have a great responsibility to evolve and to be a good steward of the environment at US Xpress. What we see in terms of that commercial strategy and really that discussion evolving with shippers is that we do see one intermodal service offering that will be disrupted. And depending on how you look at it, that's about a $20 to $40 billion market share. The second piece of that, at some point over the next decade or so, the team model. The team model will be disrupted. Will you really need two drivers in that cab to really drive that longer length of haul shipment? And we believe that autonomous technologies and that hub-to-hub model are going to allow for a more cost-competitive service and product to our shippers. And so there's evolving models, financial and economic models that we're able to illustrate to our shippers on specific lanes and corridors. And Grayson, as you know, just there are specific corridors in the Southwest. And as you get to really Dallas and to Texas and still going to I-10 into other cities like Jacksonville or Atlanta, we're excited to see what the future holds as we really get to those formative years of 2024 and 2025, which is not the finish line for autonomous trucks, but it's really the starting line as we see it. And that's what we've educated many of our shippers on as well.
The markets evolve. Markets get disrupted. I'm going to go back in my Wayback Machine here. The MP3 disrupted the CD. Digital streaming for video disrupted the DVD and Blu-ray market. And you want to know what streaming music and streaming video has in common? They're a lot more profitable and scalable than the traditional digital assets. Those markets were disrupted with massive pain, and everything came out. And the other thing that is directly related to the autonomous trucking industry and trucking as a whole created new jobs. Not one job, 10 jobs, hundreds of thousands of jobs were created when those markets were disrupted. So yes, markets in trucking will be disrupted, but it will, same as music and video, will create new, and I will point out, high-paying jobs.
And that's important. And I think one area that we really need to maybe bring together in this conversation is being an over-the-road professional truck driver. It's a lot of sacrifice and commitment, and it is a great job and a high-paying job at that. But there is, if we're completely honest, there's a lot of brokenness in that job. When you're over the road for 2 and 3 weeks at a time, and the things that you miss in your personal life and just the quality of life and the challenges there over the road, autonomous technologies and autonomous trucks specifically, we think can really press into that and actually give much more consistency. And as you've already referenced, driver home time. And so when we see this hub-to-hub model evolving, there is still this need for local pickup and delivery. And there will be this great need for interaction with this autonomous technology and workforce, whether that is for the maintenance or if that's unloading the truck, if that's really being at that terminal that we speak about of the future, where there will be so many jobs created to ensure this product. The last thing I'll reference on that point is just even in terms of utilization. I mean, when you really think about the future of an autonomous truck, where some project it could get 22 hours of utility on that autonomous truck. initial forecasts, it may be somewhere between 14 to 16. But think back to that comment in the study we did with MIT that if it's really 6.5 to 7 hours, that's really what we're getting out of utility on a truck. That is just such a meaningful impact that this technology can have across the supply chain.
It is. And I want to read you something. It took me by surprise. I was pleasantly surprised. And there's a November 17th, 2021 Bloomberg Opinion article authored by the Bloomberg Opinion editorial board. I want to read this highlight for you because it said, by eliminating legal limits on drive time, autonomous trucks could travel 24/7, thereby easing congestion, boosting delivery capacity, and doubling the daily range of a given truck from 600 miles to 1,200 miles. By mitigating human error, they could drastically reduce accidents. Environmentally, they could be a boon. Efficient throttle and brake controls can minimize fuel burn, while traveling in electronically linked platoons will reduce wind drag, boost gas miles, and slash emissions. This is the trifecta. And the Bloomberg Opinion editorial board, if you're listening, we do have listeners from Bloomberg. Thank you for writing this. Thank you for saying the truth. How do we get more outlets to realize what the Bloomberg Opinion editorial board wrote that they are spot on about?
Grayson, I think it takes people like yourself that has a voice and a platform that can really continue to educate and really advocate for the future. And just the statistics that you gave are more than likely true, that it can be the trifecta if we design meaningful technology in a really intentional manner. And I don't think there is a silver bullet for our supply chain, but many what you just quoted is a big part of that solution. And we look at this right now with autonomous trucks having a significant impact really as you get up to that 1,000-mile plus length of haul. And I know that the article referenced the 600 miles, but when you tack on that local P&D fee, and there will be that, that's where we see that the driver's going to have a place in the supply chain for quite some time. But again, it goes back to just how do we combine really significant technology that's not going away and coming on quickly. As we know, one of the AV developers will actually have driver out of cab here in the next few weeks. Again, Grayson, I would go back to yourself of just we need more people educating and then certainly advocating for the future.
Well, thank you. I try my best. I love this industry. I love the individuals that work in this industry. And I sit there and I was giving a talk, it was about a month ago at the Florida Autonomous Vehicle Summit. Gave a talk and I said, "Dear California, welcome autonomous trucking." They won't allow the trucking in there. California is a pro-environmental state. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out, though they do have great rocket scientists in California. California is all about the safety benefits of the automobile and trucks. Okay, bingo, we checked that box. They're not against lowering costs, they're about increasing costs, but autonomous trucks will lower costs. It will do great by the citizens that are overtaxed and overburdened in the state of California. But yet, California still will not allow autonomous trucks to operate in the state. Why is that, in your opinion?
Well, it's ironic since most of the autonomous developers are based out of California. And so really puts those companies in quite the bind. And quite frankly, there is fear of the unknown. And Grayson, as you and I are involved in the California Alliance for Freight Innovation and in many of those discussions with various regulators and the governor's office and other stakeholders, that there is this fear of job elimination versus how we could look at this of job enablement and job creation. And California, of all places, that has been such a critical part of our national and really global economy, we really hope that they can get on board and understand the efficiency and really gains that our overall economy and consumer and ultimately even the truck driver have to gain from this really important technology.
I'm loving history today, so I'm going back in the Wayback Machine into history again today. Imagine if our founding fathers of the United States were crippled with fear and they didn't sign the Declaration of Independence. We'd still be a colony of Great Britain today. They had grit and leadership. That's what California is grit and leadership. California has Silicon Valley. The future is being developed there. Lean in. If you're listening from California, lean in, embrace this technology. There's a Goldman Sachs report that recently came out about the Port of LA, San Pedro, and Los Angeles. There's reports container ships aren't there. Nope, Goldman, God bless Goldman, they get the research. They're out past the horizon line, so we still have a backlog at the ports. Imagine if autonomous trucks were allowed to go into the ports of San Pedro, Long Beach, and LA and start hauling goods out. The parent will be able to have the gift for their child for Christmas. They'll be able to have the birthday present. Nope, can't allow autonomous trucks. And that's the big bag boogeyman. What has to be done? What are we trying to achieve with the California Alliance for Freight Innovation that will allow this to listen to us?
I love your first point there. And maybe to take it a step further, I just imagine what we have discussed, that if you do bring autonomous trucks over the road into that middle mile, that longer length of haul, and those drivers actually shift over to that local P&D model or that drayage model. And then all of a sudden, whether it's autonomous trucks or actually drivers going in, you have that capacity to clean up those ports. Yes, in the near future, we need both. That's where we do need the support of California in so many ways to help address the challenges that we've got right in front of us. But imagine what those challenges will be 5 and 10 years from now if we don't really implement that technology. California Alliance for Freight Innovation, or as we reference CAFI, is really a committed group to really the significant innovation in terms of how we really transform freight and how it's moved across the country. It's a combination of OEMs and shippers and carriers and voices like yourself and people like myself and others that are involved in the regulatory environment. And really, it's a shared interest to present and really educate the benefits of autonomous trucking.
I'm very proud to be a member of CAFI. I'm very proud to be a part of this wonderful group of individuals, including yourself, because we will educate lawmakers and we'll show the public the benefits of this technology. And you sit there, I'm a lawmaker in Sacramento. I'm in the Assembly or I'm in the state Senate. I'm looking at this long list of companies of Charles Schwab and Company, went to Dallas. Toyota, went to Dallas. Tesla, went to Austin. 3 major corporations that have left California among countless small businesses. And I'll never forget this. I was living in California at the time, and I opened the LA Times, and the headline when Toyota left Carson, California. I'll never forget this. This one hurts. But yet the lawmakers in Sacramento did nothing to stem the bleeding, and companies continue to leave and will continue to leave. And on the trucking side, autonomous trucking is being developed in the Silicon Valley region. There's another company also in San Diego that's developing it as well. But they're deploying in Texas. There's another press release. Another company announces relocation to Dallas-Fort Worth. First run, Dallas to Houston. Relocation. I'm a lawmaker, or I'm on the Economic Development Board. I said, wait a second. We're Texas R&D lab. They're building it here and shipping it there. When do they wake up and say, Houston, we've got a problem?
Well, and then when you put the numbers to it, Grayson, when this could spur on, when I say this, autonomous trucking could spur on $111 billion in aggregate investment across the U.S. economy. And we would hope that California would want to play a significant role in that. And unfortunately, you're spot on with Texas. Texas has become ground zero for autonomous trucking, and not just for the companies to go put a terminal there and be located, but really for the infrastructure and terminal networks that now shippers are starting to engage and want to be a part of, and actually piloting freight, even to the extent of projects that really even integrate smart trailers into the pre-inspection process and really engaging law enforcement and regulatory experts. And even in recent weeks, I know there was an event hosted in Fort Worth, Texas, that really showcased the technology. People from all over the state came to really try to understand what are the next steps and where can law enforcement and government officials play a role to help accelerate this. California's got a real example, or opportunity, I should say, and it's not like they have to overhaul a great deal of legislation. And really what they're looking for is for the Department of Motor Vehicles, really under CVC, to adopt some regulations that would allow the testing over the next couple of years.
There's a clear track record, no longer leaning into innovation. Look at the space industry. Okay, it was a thriving in El Segundo, right outside of Los Angeles Airport. Well, SpaceX, Texas. Blue Origin, Texas. You're not seeing the launches in California that you once were. And it's that I got to give a lot of credit to Governor Abbott of Texas and to the Hillwood Alliance Texas individual. We had Ian Kinney on from Hillwood. They single-handedly, with the state and the law enforcement, the first one, made Texas the autonomous trucking capital of the United States. And the beautiful thing about it is, and I got to give a lot of credit to Texas, even though we love Florida, we compete with you, but they just keep growing and growing and growing and welcoming more and more autonomous trucking businesses to the state because the state has made a really great and fair environment for this industry to thrive. And with $111 billion economic impact across the U.S. economy, going back to this, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that's a good thing for your economy.
Yes, and that is certainly job creation and then certainly enablement. And you're right, as you mentioned Ian and the Hillwood Group, and you go back in history. I mean, that started 30 plus years ago when their group had the vision of what Alliance Texas could be in that mobility zone, and how fun that is to see for their organization for that coming to light. And it's not just autonomous trucking and these dynamic technologies. What they invested in was the community and really developed the land for the people and the community and gifted land for schools and hospitals, made sure that there was affordable homes and communities there for the talent to come. California has such an opportunity to really be a part of that, and hope that they decide to really play a great part in autonomous trucking.
Thank you for pointing out that Hillwood invested in the community. Ian's told me stories when they're going to launch the Bell drone, how they talked to the community what they were going to do. They invited them to be a part of that historical moment. And Hillwood does a really good job of involving the community in the way that they built it. And they've got baseball fields for Little League, and they've got good restaurants, and it's a really great quality of life out there at Hillwood. I alluded to this earlier with the Dallas to Houston run. It's very popular. Press release here, press release there. Will that continue? You've got this insight of 600 million miles. Will Dallas to Houston, in your opinion, continue to be the most trafficked autonomous trucking route for the near future? Or do you see another route starting to emerge that will take that on in terms of volume and miles traveled?
Grayson, some of this goes back to where does California want to play in this in the future? And if you think about the longer length of haul freight coming out of LA and the Port of Long Beach, we would love to think that hub-to-hub model starts there. And I think that would be really significant to that 2024 starting line. And yes, I mean, Dallas to Houston, Dallas to El Paso, and other intra-Texas lanes, and even Arizona to some extent, that's what gets a lot of press. And that's important. That really allows for testing of freight, and then also really allows the AV developers, which they often call their missions in these lanes, really to do it in a safe manner, as they are, fact of the matter, testing. I think what we will continue to see evolve is really, as you go Dallas east, is you're going to see that longer length of haul, specifically in that I-10 corridor or those lanes really moving towards Atlanta. And already starting to see specific states that are allowing for testing, but also trying to think, what do autonomous truck lanes look like? What do these smart highways look like? And I think of even how Georgia, when you think of Atlanta to Macon, they're trying to see, is there that potential or opportunity to really have a meaningful autonomous truck lane of the future, and even taking recent bids, from my understanding.
In the autonomous trucking industry, don't forget about your friends down here in Florida. We want your industry here. I know we're a peninsula, but we're a great state with a great regulatory environment that would love nothing more than to invite the autonomous trucking industry to the state. And Governor Abbott and the economic development individuals in Texas, we love to compete with you, sir. You're doing a wonderful job, but we love to compete with you on that. So industry, come on, let's have a little free market competition here.
Florida, I mean, has been a big fan and supporter of the trucking industry for years. So we just got to connect the dots from California to get there first to Florida.
Well, I have no doubt that we'll be here, and at some point in the future, there will be a political uprising in California where the consumers will demand a lower cost of goods, and that will create the opportunity for autonomous trucking to thrive in the state and do good by the residents of the state. And more importantly, it will make the roads of California, the I-5, the Grapevine, it will make it safer. It will absolutely make the roads of California safer. It will lower the cost of goods, make it safer, have a positive economic impact, and a really good impact on the environment. Let's go, California. Embrace the future. Dustin, we're looking at 2022. U.S. Xpress, up to now, since 2017, has made really incredible strides, embracing the future, embracing autonomous trucking, Variant doing right by drivers, giving them a really great platform so they can be home to watch their child's Little League game or be a part of the community or go to church on Sunday. Will U.S. Xpress continue to invest in the future of trucking and expand new business partnerships as we look 22, 23 to continue to double down and really continue the vision of innovation?
Absolutely. And that investment in innovation and technology has to start with that investment in our culture and our people. And that's where we are doubling down, whether that's at our corporate headquarters in Chattanooga, Tennessee, if that's where many of our technology talent is located in Scottsdale, Arizona, to Boulder, Colorado, Chicago, Illinois, to Atlanta, Georgia. We will continue to invest in our people and our culture. Again, I'll say this is a high-touch industry, and people are at the center of it. And it will be just more than fun to see how this evolves in the future. And so we're going to continue to invest in great technologies, not just autonomous. And when I think of what we're doing in freight optimization and investing in technologies like API and pricing algorithms that have no human intervention, and to take freight and real-time acceptance and just can do meaningful things across the supply chain with this country, I think it's going to be really interesting to see where we're sitting. And maybe Grayson, you and I are talking in 10 years about autonomous trucking at scale and how the driver plays an important role in that. And even if there are a ton of autonomous trucks moving in and out of California as well.
That will be a beautiful conversation to have because there'll be a really bright future that benefits society. What is the future of autonomous trucking, and what role do you see U.S. Xpress playing in that future?
Certainly a hot topic present day, where you've seen many of the developers go public or SPAC, and there are some really talented AV developers in this space that are doing significant work. And we often hear about that year of 2024, 2025, and we see big numbers in truck reservations with autonomous trucks. I will make that statement again, that 2024 is really the starting line where you start to see those truck reservations to hatch in really specific areas of the country where we are aggregating data, specifically lane data and behaviors now, that will allow us to insert autonomous trucks into those very specific longer length of haul lanes, starting really with key pilots in 2023 to 2024, and then 2025, when you start to see the larger fleets like US Xpress having the accessibility to bring on a couple of hundred autonomous trucks into their network. And I think that is really when you see AV starting to take light.
That's going to be a lot of fun, but it's going to be beautiful. And it's going to do good for your shareholders, and it's going to do good for your customers, and it's going to do good for society. Dustin, as we look to wrap up this super insightful conversation, what would you like our listeners to take away with them today?
Just that the truck driving professional is one of the greatest parts of our workforce in this country, and often underestimated and undervalued. But as you look around in your homes and your communities and everywhere that you go throughout your day and week, think of how a truck driving professional, the truck and a trailer, touched your life, whether you realize that or not. That is what people need to realize. And it's great that the COVID environment has accelerated that or shined a light on some of these great heroes in our industry. But this goes on each and every day. And so when you're on the road and you see one of these professional truck drivers, wave, smile, tell them thank you, and give them some space.
I like that. Boost their morale. Say thank you, because if it wasn't for the truck driver, you wouldn't have your Christmas gifts underneath the Christmas tree. Or if you're like me and you have little kids, teach your kids how to play the honk game. It's a fun way to interact with those truck drivers and puts a smile on their face because the kid showing the respect that they care for the hard work and dedication that these individuals are doing in order to allow the U.S. economy to thrive, prosper, and grow. Dustin, I thank you so much for coming on the Road to Autonomy today, because the future is bright, the future is autonomous, and the future is U.S. Xpress. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to the Road to Autonomy podcast. If you've enjoyed listening, please rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Want to get in touch? Follow us on Twitter at Road to Autonomy or email podcast@brulteco.com. The Road to Autonomy is produced by Brulte & Company. The views and opinions expressed on the Road to Autonomy podcast do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of Brulte & Company. The content discussed on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be taken as legal, tax, investment, or business advice.